And good morning. Welcome to It's How You'll Be Remembered. I am Julie Jones, your host and Chief Encouragement Officer here at Today's Professionals. And with me is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. He is one of my mentors, near and dear to my heart, Jeff King with Hook Point. Jeff, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and I'm glad we got to spend the time together. And I love the Chief Encouragement Officer title. I think that's so freaking cool. So good to see you.
We're going to talk about this in a little bit, but I am what you call a harmonizer in PCM. And so isn't that so typical of someone in my personality style?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So Jeff is the president of Hook Point, hookpoint.com with Brendan Kane. If you have not read the book, I'm going to hold this up here, Hook Point, you need to, because this is all about messaging and how to get attention on social media in this quick world that we have, right? How are you seen? And so Hook Point really gets into that. There's also another book, and I'm just going to be honest with you, Jeff. I went to pull this book off my shelf and it's not there. I must have loaned it out, but it is called 1 Million Followers in 30 Days. And who doesn't want that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was Brendan's first book that he did, 1 Million Followers. Hook Point is his second one. And then, Julie, we have a new book that just dropped last week called The Guide to Going Viral. So it's available on Amazon now.
The Guide to Going Viral.
The Guide to Going Viral, yeah.
All right. I'm going to type that in real quick because I don't have that in my library here. And I want that.
Well, we will make sure to do a copy. It just dropped about a week ago.
Nice. All of Brendan's books are amazing. And so they're great because they really get you to think about your messaging and being clear, which is, by the way, we heard about PCM on as we read this book because you mention it in there, Brendan did. And that is when we reached out to you to say, tell us more about PCM. And I've had people ask me, why is it that you're certified in the process communications model? Why is that? And I like it because it was designed, first of all, by a psychologist, and it really gets into the emotional and psychological needs of human beings.
Yeah.
Right. And this is what you were my teacher. And took me through this whole process for months.
We took our time. We were in no rush, and we probably got off onto some tangents that we could have been more efficient with our time, but
but oh my goodness, I loved every minute of going through the certification process. But I would like for you to describe PCM in your words, because you are a master trainer, right? You've been doing this for how many years?
Over 20. And I had the opportunity to be trained and certified by Tabby Kaler, the person who discovered and invented the process communication model.
Yes. And what a genius he is. And by the way, if you don't know, this PCM is taught in a wide variety of corporations, and NASA uses it. Coca-Cola is one of them.
Yeah.
And politicians are trained in it.
Yeah.
Because it really teaches you. We talk about the platinum rule. I talk about that a lot, about meeting people where they are and then bringing them forward in communication. And that's really the art of communication, because there's always someone who's delivering a message and someone who's receiving a message. And sometimes there's a disconnect between that.
Yeah.
And so PCM helps to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So share with us an overview of PCM and why you got into it.
Yeah. So PCM, if I drilled it down at its core, is it's a tool to be able to assess, connect, and motivate. And what happens is the myth around communication is that people are always communicating, and that just because I'm speaking, I'm communicating to you or to others, right? Well,
Hmm.
Taby describes and defines PCM as an offer and an acceptance. So just because I'm speaking doesn't mean I'm communicating. So I
That's
like
right.
to analogize it to like a Christmas present. Like, and during Christmas, if I give you a gift, you accept the gift. And that's what communication is. I offer you something and you accept it. Now, as humans, we all speak different languages, right? So I may be speaking the language of emotions, but if you can't hear the language of emotions, we're not going to communicate, right? So it's up to us to be able to make that assessment so we can switch the process, the way in which we're communicating. So
Hmm.
the process communication model, it teaches you how to communicate to other people so that you can be heard, but it also teaches you how to do that diagnostic, right? So if you and I are speaking, I can start to understand how you're speaking so that you and I can have the most efficient communicative interaction, right?
Yes.
So now what Brendan does at Hook Point is we use this with our social media, because in social media you have about 3 seconds right before someone scrolls. So if you think about your short form, your Instagram, your TikTok, people are scrolling through. If someone stops for 2 to 3 seconds, you get credit in the algorithm, which then helps your engagement and virality and your growth, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
so it's really important for you to be able to communicate with your short form and long form social media platforms. And Julie, like you and I talked about with your website and landing page, is PCM can teach you how to put that together so that you can communicate with the largest segments of the population.
That's
Because
right.
one of the biggest gifts I think that PCM has is it has over 1.5 million people who have taken this inventory worldwide. So we know statistically where the largest chunks of how the largest chunks of the population want to be communicated to,
Yep.
so you can tailor your message.
Yes. And it's so important because I know when I'm on social media, if that hook, that 3 seconds right there doesn't grab my attention, man, I'm on, and I'm ADD. I mean, this. I
Yeah.
go everywhere. And so, it's really hard to capture us. And I think that today and I don't know if it's social media or what, but I think there's more of us who identify as ADHD, because we're just everywhere.
Well, and our attention spans are shrinking by the day because with social media, with computers and laptops and stuff like that, our brains are literally changing right
Mhm.
now. So it's really even more important that you are learn how to communicate, because people are not spending as much time with you as they did 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I know. I know. Oh my goodness. That's so true. I mean, I see that all the time when I'm sitting at a red light and the light turns green and people don't go. It's because they're on their phones.
Yeah, yeah,
They're,
that's
you know,
yeah,
oh, I got to check social media,
I
you
know,
know.
right?
Gosh, I mean, it's crazy. So I the one thing that I loved about when I read about PCM in Hook Point was that you had a school, right? You took this into the schools
Yeah.
to teach students how to be better communicators.
Mhm.
Share a little bit about that story behind taking it to the students and what were the results?
Yeah, so I'll want to back up just a little bit because I forgot to answer one of your questions. So I
Oh,
got
okay.
into it because I was a therapist, and I did a lot of marital therapy. And so when I learned
Yep.
it, I came home and I instituted into that, and immediately my ability to resolve conflict just with uh, with marital clients
Yeah.
just bottomed out. And
Yep.
I didn't have to do 6 months a year of therapy. I could do 2 or 3 sessions, teach people how to communicate and how to connect. So fast
Yes.
forward, I started that, and then I started this consulting company with a couple friends, and then was it 2012 or something like that? I took over the headmastership at this school in Southern California called Muse, and the reason one of the primary reasons I was brought into the schools was because of the process communication model, And the founders there wanted to be a PCM school.
Yep.
So what we did is we incorporated this model into our early childhood, 2.5 years old, all the way to 12th grade. We were named, while I was the headmaster there, we were named the most innovative. What did they call it? It was like the most innovative school in the world 2 years in a row. Out of this group out of in Helsinki, which is known for kind of their education and their progressiveness and understanding around education. So what it did is we basically taught our teachers how to communicate with our students. And the overarching response there was we had very little behavior problems, because our teachers, we weren't doing personality diagnostics on the students. We were just being able to teach teachers how to listen to how students were communicate, and then packaging the content and connecting back with them.
Right.
And the other thing, PCM is a very diverse tool, so it also talks about space. There's a concept called environmental preferences, where every person wants to put their body and their brain in its best space. So
Yes.
we're able to go in and help students get in those spaces and stuff, because not every student wants to just sit and get at a desk.
No. No. And you taught me this. There are some students, some people that you just can't ask questions to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so what happens is we send people into distress, because what do we do in schools all day long?
Yeah.
Ask questions. And so they get in distress, and then it just builds like a time bomb,
Mm-hmm.
and they end up getting in trouble, and they end up going to the alternative schools.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into work with students at alternative schools, you find that once you tell them, look, it's not you,
Yeah.
you just this is the way you need to meet your needs, and you teach them how to handle that situation and meet their needs, behavior goes away.
Yeah. 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 There's a book called Here's How to Reach Me. I think, Julie, you and I talked about it. Joe and Judy Pauly in the early 80s were retired CIA agents. And they met Taby at some communication conference, and they quickly got into the education space, and they really trailblazed education, um, with using PCM. And one of the things that they did in this book, they talked about a study I think they did in the Chicago public schools, where they correlated that a student's grade had nothing to do with their academic abilities. It had to do with the similarity in their personality to the teacher's personality. And I've done a lot of work in the education space, and
Right.
teachers fall into a certain personality type in a communication process. And you
Yes.
see that in almost every single school. The behavior problems of the students are very predictable in their personality type. And what we did at Muse is we changed that process so that teachers knew how to communicate to those students, so we didn't have those behavior problems. And look, I have a lot of empathy for teachers right now, because they're getting hit in many
Yes.
different ways. But if we could
Right.
just teach teachers how to make that assessment so they can connect and motivate to the
Hmm.
diversity of the communication styles that are happening, they would see their behavior problems go down, and their ability to teach the core academics go up. Because teachers a lot of times, just especially in some of these public school spaces where they have 25, 30 kids in a classroom, they're basically just trying to corral instead of motivate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And I think too, teachers, because they really typically fall into a couple of personality types, when you're in the weeds with something, you can't really get out of it and look at the big picture. And so if you teach them how to step out of that,
Yeah.
and see it from a different perspective, it would really help.
Yeah.
I just got a message from StreamYard saying that we've lost access to Facebook. So I'm going to click this and see what happens.
Okay.
And see if we could get back on there. I've never had this happen in the middle of a talk before. So we
All
will.
kinds of new things happening today.
Yeah. So yeah, there are lots of gremlins going on, right? I mean, you had gremlins getting in, and so anyway, it says we're back. So
Okay.
we'll see. Okay, so great. So there's a lot of so we've talked about PCM,
Hmm.
and how it helps relationships and in particular marriages.
Hmm.
And then we've talked about how it helps teachers and students
Hmm.
in classrooms. Let's talk about companies, because I've talked to many companies about PCM. They're very interested in how they can help their managers better communicate with their team members, because people don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
Right.
And just like in a marriage, it's not necessarily that we don't like each other, it's that we don't know how to communicate with each other. And that is why there's frustration, explosion, somebody gets fired or somebody quits, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, so I've done a lot of conflict resolution with in corporations and in companies and things like that. And one of the things that happens is you have conflict, and we focus on the content problem of that conflict instead of the process problem of that conflict, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
instead of saying how did we disconnect, we focus on, and I'm just going to use something very kind of easy to understand. We
Yeah.
focus on you've been late for work 3 days, right? And we're going to write you up and blah 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 blah. But we don't focus on the motivation or the way to communicate to that client, to that employee, on how I can help you be on time or get your work done. And then all of a sudden they go into the HR and stuff like that. And most of the time, I mean, how many times have you worked with a company, Julie, where they'll say something like, um, they were a great employee, but I had to let them go because they were late for
Follow the
work
rules.
or
Yeah.
they did blah blah blah. And then you say something like, "Well, how was their work quality?" "Oh, it was great, but they blah 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 blah." So
Right.
I'll tell you this quick story. I
Oh.
worked with this insurance company one time, and Julie shut me off because part of the reason it took us so long to go through the training is probably because I wouldn't shut up in telling stories. But
No, no, I love it. I love it. You just keep going. I
so
have all day if you want it.
but they had this call center, and the HR company, I always joke, they had this HR manual from the 70s, right? And the HR director, she was very committed to making sure that these 40, 50-year-old or 30, 40-year-old HR policies were instituted. And
Yes.
so they had this one floor that had all this sales team up there, and they had this group of people who were really good salespeople, but they were horrible at following rules. And so she wanted to like terminate them, give them consequences and things like that. And I said, and we kind of did some research in there, and we looked at their content, and we said, who's your best salespeople? Well, it was the people she wanted to terminate. And it was because they didn't want to do 8 to 5. They didn't want to take a 1 hour break. They had a different way to do things, but they were still successful. So we did an intervention there with the HR manager, not their top salespeople. But I've seen that story over and over and over, where we terminate people because of conflict or a communication problem when they're really performing well at their jobs. And if you can teach leaders, managers, directors on how to make that assessment or diagnosis and then
Yep.
connect with them, you can
Yep.
motivate people to run through brick walls for you.
Yes. Yes. Because people want to feel valued, they want to feel heard, they want to feel understood. And most of the time, if you make them just feel valued and understood, I mean, it's just they'll stay and they
Absolutely.
will do a great job for you.
Yeah.
But if our rule followers, and but you showed up late. You were 5 minutes late 3 days in a row, and so gosh, I got to let you go. You're like, you're losing a great employee here.
Absolutely. And there's a really powerful part of PCM, because PCM really talks about, and this is my language here,
Yep.
that human beings are binary, right? And we get our needs met and we can perform in positive ways and stay in a positive life position.
Yep.
Or we don't get our needs met and now we're in a negative life position and we communicate and behave in what PCM refers to as a distressed state,
Right.
right? So
Right.
if I, if HR managers could focus on how do we get these employees' needs met,
Hmm.
then they will perform. But a lot of times, what we focus on is how do we make them follow these rules that a certain personality type created the rules. Because again, a lot of times subconsciously, If I'm not aware, Julie, I'm not communicating to you. I'm subconsciously communicating to myself and doing and saying things that are best for me instead of saying, all right, how do I communicate and set up a process for this diverse group of employees?
Right. Because it's not about me.
Right.
It's not about me.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
It's not about me. I want the world to be about me,
Yeah.
but guess what? It's not.
Right.
And so what you're describing right now about going in and working with companies and things, it feels very much like they're in school, right? You didn't follow the rules, so you're
Yeah.
going to get suspended. You got to do detention. Now you got to go alternative school. And and so you get this, no, nobody likes me here. I hate it here. And so the story is, I hate it here. So I'm just going to do everything I can to not be there.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, we always are drawn to places where we have the most healthy communication interaction. So
Hmm.
a lot of times, if people say they hate their job or they hate their the school or they hate the relationship and they're in whatever, what they're
Hmm.
really saying is they don't like the communication interaction because it's negative and it's stressful, right? So also, human beings, we don't want to be stressed out.
No,
So
well, stress will kill you.
absolutely. So if I have this communication that's stressful and people are not communicating to me in an efficient manner, I'm either going to flee or I'm going to go into my negative life position, my distress state, and I'm going to communicate that way.
Yeah. And when that happens, I always tell people, it's not that, Julie's being a jerk.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's just that she's in distress and there's something, her needs are not being met. So
Right.
let's figure out how we can meet her needs, how we can make her feel heard and valued, and then things will turn around.
Yeah. Well, and so that's really important what you just said, because what you just said was when we focus. Well, let me back up. What happens is managers and leaders take things personal, right? So someone
Mhm.
goes into distress and I say something or I do something and it hurts your feelings, it makes you feel like it's disrespectful and things like that. But if you can look at it like what you just said, so Julie just did this, I didn't like it, but that's not Julie. That's Julie in a distress state, which she's signaling to me. She's literally throwing up flags and saying, I'm not getting my needs met. I'm not in a positive life position. So if we can make that and understand that, then
Yep.
we don't have to go off the rails and start to get into an argument or conflict around the content, right? Because here's what
Mhm.
happens. You say something to me and I'm your manager, right? And I say something, well, don't talk to me like that, or your behavior is inappropriate or whatever. And then you just keep going, right?
That's right.
Because here's the thing. It's funny. So about 15 years ago, we took our kids to Barcelona. It's the first time I'd been overseas. It's the first time our kids had been overseas. And we landed in Barcelona. And, our kids were like 12, 10, 8, right? So they were very young and they were
Yeah.
hungry. And we're walking around the streets in Barcelona. And I made no plans. I was just like, we're going to get to the ground and just figure it out. Well, our daughter was hungry. So there was this street vendor who was selling pizza. So she goes up to the street vendor and she says, may I have a piece of cheese pizza? And the street vendor's like, no English, no English. And so our daughter, Maggie, she's like, can I have a piece of cheese pizza?
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, no English, no English. And then she's like, can I have it? And she's like, so she just starts kind of raising her voice, right? So I had to grab her so we didn't get, kicked out of the country or whatever. But that's what happens is like we say something and we're not heard. So instead of changing how we say it, we just say it louder, right?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
so if you come in and I'm your manager, Julie, and you're in a distress state and you say something to me and I say that's inappropriate, you're just going to say it louder.
Yeah.
But if I'm a manager and I can make that assessment and I can meet your needs, and PCM talks about kind of two ways to keep employees into a positive communication position, and that's meeting their needs and using their channel. And channel is how you do the open and the offer and acceptance, the open
Right.
and the close.
Right.
And if as a manager, director, president, CEO, if you can do that, now this person's not going to have these behavior problems
Right.
or things like that, and they're going to get back to work. Now, here's what managers are probably saying if they're watching this. well, Jeff, I'm not a babysitter. I don't need to spend time, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So,
Grow up, be an adult.
yeah, put your big boy pants on or whatever, the all that crap people say. But here's the thing. You can choose to say that and continue to deal with the conflict, or you can learn how to communicate effectively, because here's the dirty little secret, right?
Right.
As a manager, director, leader, I don't want people barging into my office,
That's
right?
right.
But
Right.
if I can communicate with them effectively, they will get their job done. And when they do come into my office, we'll have a clean, crisp communication interaction, and they'll be motivated to go back to work. But
Right.
the employees who are in a negative life position, they're the ones banging on the doors, coming into the office and things like that, and stressing people out, because it's not that they can't do their job. It's just that their needs are not being met and they're in this distressed state.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And what you're describing is culture. What
Yeah.
you're describing is culture. And so when there is a negative culture in a company, there is a revolving door in and out the manager's office and in and out the company door. You're
Yeah.
always looking to hire. About the time you get somebody trained and they understand what they're doing, they're out the door again. They got an offer for $5 more,
Yep.
whatever. So
And
culture is
no,
important.
yeah. I
Go
just
ahead.
something really important about money, because, people don't, and I agree with you 100%. People don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
Mhm.
And people use the excuse, I want more money, right?
Right.
Now that in the last couple of years has taken on a whole new, what do I want to say? A whole new something. I can't think of the word right now, right? Because jobs are they're everywhere. I mean, it's easier to get a job today than probably any time in American history. Jobs are plentiful, and people can make, the cost of living is high, but people can get jobs, and people can get higher paying jobs now.
Yes.
So it's even more important for you as a manager to create this culture that you're talking about, because right now it's like, oh, and especially the under 30. Julie pissed me off. I'm going to go work over here,
That's right.
and they can, because
Yeah.
of the job market right now today.
Right. Right. It's like, screw her. I don't care. I'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because really, it's not about, years ago, it was all about you get a job right out of college and you try to keep it for 30 years because you try to build up the pension and you try to build up the longevity and you climb the corporate ladder and all of that.
Mhm.
Today, the way that you build your pension or your retirement and you climb the corporate ladder is you jump ship and you go to somewhere else who pays you a hiring bonus and more money, and you have more negotiation power because people want good employees and they don't know how to get them.
Right. Yeah.
And so they're throwing money at them. And
Right.
so people are like, hey, I'll change, because if the culture is not good at the company, then you will see it when people leave. But if the culture is great and people are happy and they go to work and they're making money that incentivizes them and they have their needs met, they won't leave.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
the
And
chances of them leaving are less.
yeah, no,
Yes.
for sure. And what is one of the number one cost for corporations, businesses,
Yeah.
especially your smaller business? It's turnover, right? And so, like with our employees at Hook Point,
Mhm.
um, they're very skilled and they're very good at their job. I spend almost zero time with them talking about the content of their job, right? The
Mhm.
majority of my time, like every single Monday, I meet with every employee at Hook Point, Monday and Tuesday, to kind of depend on schedule. And the number one thing I talk to them about is, are you getting your needs met? How are you doing? Right? Now, if they have content problems, we can talk about that too. But my primary concern is, are you in a positive life position? Great. If so, let's keep you there. If not, how can we get you back to there? Right?
Right.
Because look, it's funny. I was watching The Bear last night, the third season, and this woman, they go back in time, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but
Mhm.
um, she lost her job, and then she's walking on the street. She walks into this cafe, and she told this guy she didn't lose her job, or she's looking for a job. The guy's like, well, I'll hire you to be a line cook. And she was like, oh, I have a resume. And he was like, what am I going to do with a resume? Right. And I can't tell you how many times people come with me and they were like, well, did you have a chance to read my resume? And I'm like, I didn't even look at it.
Right.
And so if you know, because I'm looking for a few things, right? I'm looking for really three things when I interview someone. Are they open? Are they resourceful? And are they persistent? And if
Mhm.
they can do that and demonstrate that, then I can look at their content.
Yes. Because here's the deal, you hire to culture and train the skill. And that's what I preach to everyone.
Yep.
Hire the person who has the value system, the work ethic, and that will fit in with your team, because you can train anybody to do anything. I mean, unless it's like a doctor or something. I mean, it's something specialized like that,
Right.
right? But even then, who fits in best with your team?
Right.
And so, I love the fact that you're like, yeah, I don't look at resumes. I just want to know who you are.
Yeah. When
I
I
love
was
that.
there was this guy named Dr. Ware who was at LSU, and he was the head of psychiatry down there, and he was partners with Taby, and he helped Taby create the process communication model. And I used to go down there in my early days, and we would learn from him. But also, there's a couple times I would actually work with some of his doctors teaching PCM to some of his medical staff. And one of the things that Dr. Ware would always say. Is I have doctors that I'm training and that can literally, you know, cut off the wrong arm or the wrong leg and they won't get sued because the patient has a positive relationship with them.
Yeah.
Versus I have doctors that get sued for no reason because the patients don't like them and they're not connected to them. So his thing, and I think he was named psychiatrist of the year 2 years, got that award a couple times, but his thing is like the medical problem is secondary. Connecting with the patient is primary. Then you can motivate them to comply
Yes.
with whatever your treatment plan is or whatever. But he said, you know, most lawsuits that happen against doctors, he said, are not about the medical issue. They're about because they
Mhm.
don't like the person because they didn't communicate positively.
Yep. Oh my gosh. So now you know why he's one of my favorite people in the whole world, because I could talk to him all day long, which is why I drug out that training for so long. And it's like, can we do twice a week training too? Can we? Because you just, when you're talking to you, you know how to do it. You are the best. And so I am so grateful that you came on here to talk about the importance of communication and the importance of understanding the process communications model, because it is life changing. It's life changing.
Well,
So,
I appreciate that, Julie.
well, will you come back sometime? Because
100%. Absolutely.
I have a feeling that once this gets out and people start to watch it, they're going to go, hey, we want to hear more from him.
Yeah.
And so I'll just go ahead and say, will you come back sometime?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it has been such a delight to talk to you. Thank you so much for giving your time and wisdom to us. And I love PCM. I love being able to teach it. I love being able to talk about it and to use it in my coaching practice, as well as going into corporations and telling them how important it is to really, and it really affects their bottom line. I mean,
Mhm.
it is so important. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're very, very welcome. I appreciate you and thank you for your commitment to PCM. And absolutely, we can schedule a time and I'll come back and holler at you.
I love it. All right, Jeff, have a great week.